The morning Rebecca Morgan threw her coffee at me in the middle of Starbucks was the morning my carefully constructed life began to unravel, and, paradoxically, the morning it truly began. I'd seen her before, of course. In a town like Millbrook, population 8,000, you see everyone before. Rebecca was hard to miss, tall, impeccably dressed, with a kind of sharp features that looked like they'd been carved by someone who understood the power of intimidation. She drove a white Mercedes, served on every important committee in town, and had a smile that never quite reached her eyes. But I'd never actually spoken to her until that Tuesday in March, when she marched up to my table, designer heels clicking against the tile floor like gunshots, and said 5 words that would change everything. "Give me your husband, Natalie." The coffee shop went silent. Even the espresso machine seemed to hold its breath. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing the quarterly reports for the non-profit I directed, and blinked at her. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. "Excuse me." Rebecca's perfectly manicured hand gripped the back of the chair across from me. Her knuckles were white. "You heard me. Give me your husband." I closed my laptop slowly, my mind racing through possibilities. Was this some kind of bizarre joke? A mental health crisis? Had the universe suddenly shifted into an alternate dimension where wealthy socialites openly demanded other women's spouses like they were borrowing sugar? "Rebecca," I said carefully, keeping my voice low and calm, "I think you should sit down. You seem upset." "Upset?" Her laugh was sharp and brittle. "Upset doesn't begin to cover it. Do you have any idea what you've taken from me?" The other patrons were no longer pretending not to listen. Phones were emerging from pockets. In approximately 30 seconds, this would be all over town. "I genuinely don't know what you're talking about," I said, and I meant it. My husband David was a high school English teacher and volunteer basketball coach. He spent his evenings grading papers and his weekends helping me paint the nursery for the baby we were expecting in 4 months. The most dramatic thing about him was his passionate defense of the Oxford comma. Rebecca leaned down, her face inches from mine. I could smell her expensive perfume, see the tiny stress lines around her mouth that her makeup couldn't quite hide. "Your husband," she hissed, "destroyed my marriage. He destroyed my entire life. And I want you to give him to me so I can destroy his." My protective instincts kicked in immediately. Whatever delusion Rebecca was operating under, I wasn't going to let her threaten David. "That's enough," I said, standing up. At 5'4", I had to look up at her, but I'd learned long ago that physical height had nothing to do with the kind of strength that mattered. "I don't know what you think David did, but you're wrong. And if you threaten my family again, You'll what?" Rebecca's eyes glittered with something that looked like triumph. "Call the police? Please do. I'd love to tell them how your husband has been sleeping with mine for the past 6 months. The words hit me like a physical blow. The coffee shop tilted sideways. That's insane," I stammered, but even as I said it, something cold was spreading through my chest. "David isn't. He's not gay," Rebecca finished. "Bisexual? Curious? I don't know what label you want to put on it, Natalie. I don't care. All I know is that my husband came home last night and told me he's leaving me for a man. Your man. They're in love," he said. "It's real," he said. "He's sorry," he said. She pulled out her phone and thrust it at me. On the screen was a text conversation. I recognized David's number, the same number I'd called that morning to remind him to pick up milk on his way home. I can't keep lying to her. I have to tell Natalie the truth. Not yet. Please. Give me a few more days. I need to figure out how to break this to her. I love you. I can't keep pretending I don't. The phone slipped from my suddenly nerveless fingers and clattered on the table. "So you see," Rebecca said, her voice cold and controlled now, "your husband has already taken mine. The least you can do is return the favor. Give me David." Let me have the satisfaction of watching him suffer the way I'm suffering. The way you're about to suffer. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The baby kicked inside me, our baby, David's and mine, and the movement grounded me just enough to remember who I was. What I was made of. I'd grown up in foster care, bounced between 7 different homes before I aged out of the system at 18. I'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. I'd built a life from nothing, created a family from my own determination and will. I'd survived worse than this. I looked up at Rebecca Morgan, this woman who thought pain gave her the right to inflict more pain, and I said the words that would later make me famous, or infamous, depending on who you asked. No. She blinked. What? No, I repeated, stronger this time. I won't give you my husband. I won't give you anything. But I'll tell you what I will do. I picked up my coffee, still half full, still warm, and held it steady despite my shaking hands. I will go home. I will talk to David. I will find out the truth, the real truth, not whatever version you've constructed in your pain. And then I will decide what happens next. Not you. Not him. Me. You think you have a choice? Rebecca's laugh was ugly. Your marriage is over. Your life as you know it is over. Everything you thought you knew was a lie. Maybe, I said. But even if that's true, I still have a choice in how I respond. And I choose not to become like you. Rebecca's face flushed red. How dare you? How dare I what? Refuse to join you in whatever revenge fantasy you're playing out? Refuse to believe that cruelty is the answer to being hurt? I shook my head. I'm sorry for your pain, Rebecca. I truly am. But your pain doesn't give you the right to demand mine. You smug little. Rebecca grabbed for my coffee cup, and whether she meant to throw it at me or just knock it away, I never knew. What I did know was that suddenly I was wearing her rage, the hot liquid soaking through my shirt, and the baby was kicking frantically, and the entire coffee shop was on their feet. But I didn't move. I just stood there, coffee dripping down my face, and looked at Rebecca Morgan with something that might have been pity. I hope you find peace, I said quietly. I really do. Then I picked up my laptop bag and walked out of the Starbucks, leaving behind the whispers and the phones and the woman whose life had just imploded the same way mine was about to. David was home when I got there, which should have been my first clue that something was wrong. It was only 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. He should have been teaching junior English, diagramming sentences, leading discussions about metaphor and meaning. Instead, he was sitting at our kitchen table, his head in his hands. He looked up when I walked in, and the expression on his face told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't confusion or denial. This was guilt. Natalie, he said, and his voice broke on my name. I set down my bag very carefully. I was still wearing the coffee, though I'd tried to clean up in the car. My hands had finally stopped shaking, replaced by a strange, cold numbness that I recognized as shock. Is it true? I asked. He closed his eyes. Rebecca called you. Rebecca threw coffee at me in the middle of Starbucks and told me you've been sleeping with her husband. So I'll ask again, is it true? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Yes, he finally whispered. It's true. I'd thought I was prepared to hear it. I'd spent the entire drive home preparing for this exact moment. But nothing could have prepared me for the way those 2 words would feel like a knife between my ribs. How long? I asked, and I was proud of how steady my voice sounded. 6 months. Maybe 7. I'm not sure exactly when it started. You're not sure. I laughed, and it sounded slightly hysterical even to my own ears. You're not sure when you started cheating on your pregnant wife with a married man, but you're sure enough that you told him you loved him. David flinched. You saw the texts. Rebecca was kind enough to share them. I pulled out a chair and sat down, not because I wanted to, but because my legs were suddenly unreliable. Tell me everything. And don't you dare lie to me again. So he told me. He told me about meeting Eric Morgan at a community theater audition, the spring production of Inherit the Wind that neither of them got cast in. About getting coffee afterward to commiserate. About how easy it was to talk to him, how understood he felt. It wasn't about you, David said, and I wanted to throw something at him. Of course it was about me, I snapped. You made a choice, David. You made hundreds of choices. Every time you texted him, every time you met him, every time you lied to me about where you were going, those were all choices that were about me. About us. About this baby. My hand went to my stomach, and David's eyes followed the movement. He looked destroyed. I never meant for this to happen, he said. I never thought. I've never been attracted to men before. Not like this. Not ever. So I should feel special? The sarcasm was armor, and I needed it. Lucky me, I get to be the wife who finds out her husband discovered a whole new sexual orientation while I was growing his child. That's not fair. Fair. I stood up so fast the chair toppled backward. You want to talk to me about fair? I'm 6 months pregnant, David. 6 months. We've been planning this baby for 2 years. We picked out names. We painted the nursery together last weekend. You told me you loved me every single day while you were texting another man that you loved him too. I do love you, he said desperately. Natalie, I love you so much. Don't. The word came out like a gunshot. Don't you dare tell me you love me while you're leaving me for someone else. I'm not. I haven't decided. Then decide. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to hold myself together. Right now. Do you want to be with him or with me? David's face crumpled. It's not that simple. It really is that simple. You're just too much of a coward to make the choice. I need time, he pleaded. I need to figure out who I am, what I want. And what am I supposed to do while you figure yourself out? Wait patiently with your baby in my belly while you decide if you want to be part of this family. That's not. I don't know, Natalie. I don't know anything right now. I looked at my husband, this man I'd loved for 8 years, married for 5, trusted with everything I was and everything I hoped to become, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of this house. Right now. Go stay with your parents. Go stay with Eric. I don't care. But you don't get to stay here while you figure out your identity crisis. You don't get the comfort of this home, this marriage, while you decide if we're worth fighting for. Natalie, please. Please what? Please let you have it both ways? Please make this easier for you. I shook my head. I've made things easy for you our entire marriage. I worked extra hours so you could take that unpaid teaching position you wanted. I moved here to Millbrook, away from my friends, because it was your hometown. I agreed to try for a baby when you said you were ready, even though I was terrified. My voice was rising now, all the careful control slipping away. I've spent 8 years being understanding and accommodating and supportive. But I will not stand here and watch you try to have both a secret boyfriend and a wife. You want to explore who you are? Fine. Do it somewhere else. David was crying now, tears streaming down his face. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, I said simply. You hurt me in the worst possible way. And now you need to leave so I can figure out how to survive it. He stood up slowly, like he'd aged 20 years in the past hour. I'll pack a bag. Pack several bags, I said. You won't be coming back any time soon. I watched him walk up the stairs to our bedroom, and with every step he took, I felt a piece of my life falling away. The future we'd planned. The family we were supposed to become. The trust that had taken years to build and minutes to destroy. When he came back down with a duffel bag and his laptop case, he paused in the doorway. "I really do love you," he said, and he sounded so broken that for a moment, just a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. But then the baby kicked again, and I remembered that I wasn't the only person David had betrayed. "If you loved me," I said, "you would have been brave enough to tell me the truth before you started something with Eric. You would have respected me enough to let me make an informed choice about my own life. But you didn't. So whatever you feel for me, David, it's not love. At least not the kind of love that matters." He flinched like I'd slapped him, then turned and walked out. I listened to his car pull out of the driveway, listened to the sound fade into the distance, and then I sank down onto the kitchen floor and let myself fall apart. The next 3 days passed in a blur of shock and sorrow. My phone rang constantly, friends who'd heard about the Starbucks incident, colleagues expressing concern, David's mother crying and apologizing, my own best friend Jamie driving 2 hours from the city to stay with me. But the call that surprised me the most came on Friday afternoon. "Natalie, this is Eric Morgan." I almost hung up. The only thing that stopped me was curiosity. Morbid, painful curiosity about the man who'd helped destroy my marriage. "What do you want?" I asked coldly. "I want to apologize. And I want to explain. I don't need your apology, and I definitely don't need your explanation. Please." His voice was rough, like he'd been crying. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a park on the edge of town, neutral ground. Eric was sitting on a bench when I arrived, and I was struck by how ordinary he looked. Average height, average build, with the kind of pleasant face that wouldn't stand out in a crowd. This was the man who'd appended 2 marriages? "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down, at the far end of the bench, as far from him as possible. "You have 5 minutes." He nodded, took a deep breath. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I know that sounds hollow, but it's true. I've been married to Rebecca for 12 years. We have 2 kids. I thought I was happy. Congratulations. You want a medal for your self-discovery at everyone else's expense." "No," he said quietly. "I want you to understand that David and I are both trying to navigate something we don't fully understand ourselves. I've never been attracted to men before. I thought what I was feeling was just friendship. By the time I realized it was more, we were already." "Already what?" "Already in love. Already sleeping together." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Which milestone of betrayal are we celebrating here? Eric looked down at his hands. "I told Rebecca the truth because she deserved to know. But I should have told her months ago. And David should have told you. We both should have been braver." "Brave," I repeated. "That's an interesting word choice." "Wrong word," he amended. "More honest. More decent. I don't know. I'm not good with words like David is." Despite myself, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Eric looked almost as devastated as I felt. "Why are you really here?" I asked. "Because Rebecca told me what she did. At the coffee shop. And I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. Not just for the affair, but for how you found out. For everything. Your apology doesn't change anything." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask. I might not answer." "What did you say to Rebecca after she demanded you give her David?" I thought back to that moment, the coffee dripping down my face, the entire town watching, the choice I'd made about who I wanted to be even in the worst moment of my life. "I said no," I told him. "I said I wouldn't give her my husband, but I also wouldn't become like her. I wouldn't let pain turn me into someone who inflicts pain on others." Eric's eyes widened. That must have taken incredible strength. It took all the strength I had, I admitted, and I'm not sure I have any left. We sat in silence for a while, two people whose lives had been shattered by the same revelation, separated by blame and circumstance. What happens now? Eric finally asked. I don't know, I said honestly. David's staying with his parents. We haven't talked since he left. I'm trying to figure out how to be angry and heartbroken and 6 months pregnant all at the same time. Rebecca's filing for divorce. She wants full custody of the kids. Will she get it? Probably not. I'm a good father. This doesn't change that. He looked at me. You're a good person, Natalie. David's told me about you. How strong you are, how kind, how much you've overcome. He admires you so much. Just not enough to stay faithful to me. It's not about you, Eric said, echoing David's words. It's about us, David and me, trying to understand ourselves. But it is about me, I said fiercely. It's about me because I'm the one left holding the pieces. It's about me because I'm the one who has to figure out how to raise a child whose father chose to blow up our family. It's about me because every choice you and David made was a choice that affected my life. Eric nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing, I said, suddenly exhausted. Apologies don't fix this. Nothing fixes this. What would you do, he asked hesitantly, if David wanted to come home? If he said he made a mistake? The question caught me off guard. I realized I hadn't let myself think that far ahead. I don't know, I said. Ask me again in 6 months, after I've had this baby alone. After I've had time to figure out who I am without him. After I've stopped flinching every time I remember that he lied to me for half a year. That's fair. Fair. I laughed bitterly. Nothing about this is fair, Eric. Not for me, not for Rebecca, not for your kids, not for this baby. I put my hand on my stomach. This child is going to grow up in a broken home because you and David couldn't figure yourselves out before you hurt everyone around you. I know, he said, and he sounded genuinely anguished. I hate myself for it. Good, I said, and I meant it. You should. I stood up to leave, but Eric's voice stopped me. Natalie? For what it's worth, I think what you said to Rebecca was one of the bravest things I've ever heard. You could have lashed out. You could have tried to hurt her the way she hurt you. But you chose differently. I chose survival, I corrected, because that's all I've ever known how to do. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. David and I met twice to discuss logistics, health insurance, finances, what we'd tell people. Both conversations were stilted and painful, full of long silences and unshed tears. He looked terrible, like he wasn't sleeping or eating properly. Part of me was glad. Part of me still wanted to comfort him. I hated that second part most of all. The town gossip was relentless. Half of Millbrook thought David was a monster. The other half whispered that I must have driven him away somehow, been too demanding, too cold, too something. Nobody seemed to consider that maybe marriage was just complicated and people were just flawed and sometimes things fell apart through a combination of circumstances that had no simple villain. Jamie stayed with me for 2 weeks before she had to get back to work. My mother-in-law visited, crying through most of the conversation, begging me not to give up on her son. I told her gently that David had given up on us first. The non-profit board gave me family leave, which I gratefully accepted. I spent my days preparing the nursery alone, assembling the crib by myself with tears streaming down my face, folding tiny clothes and wondering how I was going to do this. And then, 6 weeks after that terrible Tuesday in Starbucks, Rebecca Morgan called me. Please don't hang up, she said immediately. I'm listening. I owe you an apology. A real one, not the performative kind. She took a shaky breath. What I did was unforgivable. You didn't deserve any of it. The public humiliation, the accusations, the coffee. God, the coffee. I was out of my mind with pain, and I took it out on you. I sat down slowly on the couch. Why are you calling me now? Because my therapist asked me a question that I couldn't answer. She asked me what I hoped to accomplish by hurting you. And I realized I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to hurt David and Eric, but they weren't there, so you became the target. That doesn't make it okay. I know it doesn't. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to explain who I am when I'm not drowning in the worst day of my life. Despite everything, I was curious. Okay. Over the next hour, Rebecca told me her story. She and Eric had been high school sweethearts, married at 22, building what she thought was a perfect life. She'd given up her career in marketing to raise their children. She'd built her entire identity around being Mrs. Eric Morgan. When he told me the truth, she said, it wasn't just losing him. It was losing who I was. Every choice I'd made for 12 years had been predicated on our marriage. And suddenly it was all built on sand. I understand that, I said quietly. More than you know. The thing is, Rebecca continued, I've spent the past few weeks doing a lot of thinking. A lot of therapy. And I realized that my marriage had been in trouble for years. I just didn't want to see it. Eric and I had become roommates who shared children. We barely talked about anything real anymore. We were coasting on momentum. That doesn't excuse the affair. No, she agreed. Nothing excuses the affair. But it explains some things. And it's made me realize that maybe this is an opportunity. An opportunity? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. To figure out who I am outside of being someone's wife. To build a life that's actually mine, not just an extension of someone else's choices. She paused. I'm not saying I'm grateful for what happened, but I'm trying to find a way forward that doesn't involve drowning in bitterness. That's actually incredibly healthy, I admitted. I have a good therapist, Rebecca said wryly. But I wanted to call and tell you that I'm sorry. And to tell you that what you said to me that day, about choosing who you want to be, it stuck with me. It's been guiding me through this. We talked for a while longer, and by the end of the call, I wouldn't say we were friends, but we'd reached a kind of understanding. We were two women who'd been hurt by the same situation, trying to survive in our own ways. After I hung up, I sat for a long time, thinking about choices and survival and the strange ways life pushes us toward growth. David came to see me on a Sunday afternoon in early May. I was in the nursery, putting sheets on the crib, when I heard his knock. Can we talk? He asked when I opened the door. I let him in, not because I'd forgiven him, but because we needed to have a conversation about the future. About co-parenting and custody and all the practical things that came with a broken marriage and an imminent baby. But David had other plans. I need to tell you something, he said as we sat in the living room, him on the armchair, me on the couch, that careful distance between us. I've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of therapy, and I've realized something important. What's that? I'm bisexual. He said it like it was a revelation, like it was the answer to everything. That's what I've been struggling with. Understanding that I'm attracted to both men and women. Understanding that this is part of who I am. Okay, I said carefully. Thank you for telling me. And I want you to know that being bisexual doesn't mean I can't be faithful. It doesn't mean I need to be with both a man and a woman. It just means I'm attracted to people regardless of gender. David, I know what bisexual means. That's never been the issue. He looked confused. Then what is the issue? The issue, I said slowly, is that you cheated on me. The issue is that you lied to me for months. The issue is that you broke my trust in the most fundamental way possible. Your sexuality isn't the problem. Your choices are the problem. But I was confused. So you've said. Multiple times. And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure figuring out your sexuality in your 30s while married to a woman was confusing and difficult. I leaned forward. But David, confusion doesn't excuse betrayal. You could have come to me when you started questioning things. You could have been honest. Instead, you started a whole relationship with another person without telling me. I was afraid, he said. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of what it meant about me. And now you've lost me anyway, I said softly. Not because you're bisexual. Because you're someone who lies when things get hard. So that's it. His voice cracked. We're just done. I looked at him, really looked at him, and tried to find the man I'd fallen in love with. The teacher who'd read poetry to me in bed. The coach who spent hours working with kids who had nowhere else to go. The husband who'd cried when we found out we were pregnant. He was still in there somewhere. But so was the man who'd betrayed me. I don't know if we're done, I said honestly. I know that right now, I don't trust you. I know that I'm about to have a baby in 6 weeks and I need to focus on being ready for that. I know that I can't carry both my own healing and your guilt. What can I do? He asked desperately. Tell me what to do to fix this. That's the thing, David. You can't fix this. Not right now. Maybe not ever. What you can do is work on yourself. Figure out who you are and who you want to be. Go to therapy. Take responsibility for your choices without making excuses. I've ended things with Eric, he said. Completely. I'm not seeing him anymore. Because you want to, or because you think it's what I want to hear? He was quiet for a long moment. Both, maybe. I don't know. Everything is so confused. Then keep working on it, I said. Keep figuring it out. But do it on your own time, not mine. Can I be there when the baby comes? The question caught me off guard. I'd been trying not to think about the birth, about labor and delivery, and the moment when everything would change again. Yes, I said. You're this baby's father. Whatever happened between us, that doesn't change. Relief flooded his face. Thank you. But David. I waited until he looked at me. Being in the delivery room doesn't mean we're getting back together. It doesn't mean I've forgiven you. It just means I'm trying to do what's best for our child. I understand. He left shortly after that, and I went back to the nursery, to the crib with its fresh sheets and the mobile that played gentle music and all the tiny preparations for a future that looked nothing like what I'd planned. Lily Rebecca Adams was born on June 15th at 3:47 in the morning, weighing 7 pounds, 6 ounces, with a head full of dark hair and her father's eyes. David was there, holding my hand through the contractions, looking terrified and awed in equal measure. When the doctor placed Lily on my chest, both of us cried, great, heaving sobs of joy and sorrow and everything we'd lost and found. She's perfect, David whispered, his hand on Lily's tiny back. She is, I agreed, and in that moment, I meant it with my whole heart. Whatever happened between David and me, we'd made this. This perfect, beautiful creature who didn't care about our failures or our broken promises. She just wanted to be held and fed and loved. We could give her that much, at least. My mother-in-law came to visit the next day, followed by Jamie, and then by a surprise visitor, Rebecca Morgan, holding a gift bag and looking uncertain. I wasn't sure if I should come, she said, hovering in the doorway. But I wanted to drop this off. Inside the bag was a beautiful handmade quilt in shades of cream and lavender. I made it, Rebecca said. Quilting has been my therapy lately. I thought maybe Lily could use it. I was stunned. Rebecca, this is beautiful. You didn't have to. I wanted to, she interrupted. I wanted to do something kind. For both of us, maybe. She stayed for half an hour, holding Lily with the careful confidence of someone who'd done this before, telling me about her kids and her divorce proceedings and the job she'd just accepted at a marketing firm in the city. I'm moving, she said. Fresh start. The kids will split time between here and there, but I need to be someone other than Eric's ex-wife. I think that's brave, I said. She laughed. Remember when I accused you of being smug? I was so wrong. You're not smug. You're just strong in a way I didn't know how to be yet. After she left, I sat with Lily in my arms, thinking about strength and choices and the strange ways people come into our lives. By December, I'd found a rhythm. Work 3 days a week at the nonprofit, with Lily in the on-site daycare. Home the other days, napping when she napped, learning to function on broken sleep and fierce maternal love. David came by twice a week for his custody time. He'd rented an apartment across town and filled it with baby gear. He was good with Lily, patient and gentle and completely besotted. Whatever his failures as a husband, he was trying hard to be a good father. We were polite to each other now, careful. We talked about Lily's schedule and her sleep patterns and whether we should start solid foods. We didn't talk about us. Until one evening in mid-December, when David showed up for his evening with Lily and asked if we could talk after he put her to bed. Sure, I said, wary but willing. 2 hours later, Lily was asleep in her crib, and David and I sat at the kitchen table with mugs of tea between us. I've been in therapy, he said, every week since May. That's good. And I've figured some things out. He wrapped his hands around his mug. About who I am. About what I want. Okay, I said carefully. I'm bisexual. I'm comfortable with that now. It's part of who I am, and I'm not ashamed of it anymore. He looked up at me. But Natalie, the person I want to be with is you. If you'll have me. If there's any chance. David, I interrupted gently. I need to stop you there. His face fell. You've moved on. No, I said. I haven't moved on. But I've moved forward. Do you understand the difference? He shook his head. Moving on would mean forgetting what happened. Putting it behind me. I can't do that. What you did changed me. It changed how I see relationships and trust and love. I took a breath. But moving forward means I've built a life that works. A life where I'm whole on my own. Where Lily and I are okay, just the two of us. So you don't want me back, he said quietly. I didn't say that. I reached across the table and took his hand, surprising both of us. I said I've moved forward. But David, if we were going to try again, it would have to be different. It couldn't be about going back to how things were. We'd have to build something new. Hope flickered in his eyes. I want that. I want to build something new with you. But I need to know you're sure.